Our first president, George Washington, died in 1799, and George died from a serious throat infection. Doctors, believing it would help, tried bloodletting and drained about 80 ounces of blood, the equivalent of about 6 Red Bulls, and it made things much worse. As he struggled to breathe, his final words were, "'Tis well." Number 2, John Adams, 1826, and number 3, Thomas Jefferson, also 1826, shared the most insane coincidence in U.S. history. America's second and third presidents died on the exact same day. After starting out as friends and revolutionary bros, they became political rivals, but decades later, they reconnected as pen pals and became besties again. On July 4th, 1826, exactly 50 years after signing the Declaration of Independence, the spookiest thing happened. Jefferson, nearing death, asked, "Is it the 4th?" He held on for one more day, with his final words being, "No, doctor, nothing more." Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Adams, unaware his bestie had died hours earlier, said his famous last words. Thomas Jefferson survives. 10 years later, our fourth president, James Madison, almost completed the 4th of July trifecta. After dealing with congestive heart failure, he was on his deathbed, and doctors were desperately trying to keep him alive until July 4th. When offered more medicine, Madison said, "Nothing more than a change of mind, my dear." He died on June 28th, just a week short. Our fifth president, James Monroe, did make it. On July 4th, 1831, he became the third president to die on Independence Day. His final words were a wistful farewell to his old friend Madison. "I regret that I should leave this world without again beholding him." Number 6, John Quincy Adams died in 1848 on the floor of Congress. He famously served as a representative after his presidency, and while casting a vote, he suffered a massive stroke. As he was being carried out, he said, "This is the last of Earth. I am content." Number 7, Andrew Jackson, in 1848, was a tough dude who fought duels and survived the first ever presidential assassination attempt. But on his deathbed, surrounded by his family, this tough guy turned into a softie, with his last words being, "Oh, do not cry, be good children, and we shall all meet in heaven." Number 8, Martin Van Buren, 1862, struggled with asthma and heart problems. He died quietly, with his last words being, "There is but one reliance," which is his word of expressing his trust in God. Number 9, William Henry Harrison died in 1841. He held the record for the shortest presidency because of a dumb mistake. We thought he died from pneumonia after giving an insanely long inauguration speech in the freezing rain without a coat, but recent studies suggest he died from typhoid fever, likely contracted from the contaminated drinking water at the White House. His presidency only lasted 31 days. Number 10, John Tyler in 1862 was the only president whose death wasn't officially mourned by the country, because during the Civil War, Tyler sided with the South. He was even elected to the Confederate Congress, but before he could start the job, he started having dizzy spells and died of a stroke, with his last words being, "Perhaps it's for the best." Number 11, James Polk in 1849 died far too young at 53 years old. 3 months after leaving office, he was on a tour of the South where he contracted cholera. Despite the circumstances, he went out as a romantic, with his last words to his wife being, "I love you, Sarah, for all eternity. I love you." Number 12, Zachary Taylor in 1850 died from eating too many cherries and drinking too much milk. Or did he? During a 4th of July celebration, he came down with gastroenteritis and died 3 days later. Many believe he was actually poisoned due to rising pre-Civil War tensions, but when forensic scientists looked at his body in the 90s, they found nothing fishy, just some bad cherries. Before he died, Taylor said, "I am about to die. I expect the summons soon. I have tried to discharge my duties faithfully. I regret nothing." Number 13, Millard Fillmore, died in 1874, and he lived a long time after his presidency. But right before he died, someone gave him soup. And Fillmore said, "The nourishment is palatable," which basically means in fancy talk, this tastes great. 5 stars for the soup. Number 14, Franklin Pierce, 1869, had one of the saddest deaths ever. Just weeks before taking office, his son was killed in a horrific train accident. This sent Pierce on a downward spiral of depression. He started drinking too much, became an alcoholic, and destroyed his liver with cirrhosis. Pierce died after losing re-election, and no one wrote down his last words because He was all alone. Number 15, James Buchanan in 1868. Buchanan is widely viewed as one of the worst presidents because the Civil War was coming and he did nothing to stop it. Buchanan died of a bad respiratory infection, going out with his final proclamation, "O Lord God Almighty, as God willed." Number 16, Abraham Lincoln died 1865. One of the greatest presidents in American history was shot in the head by John Wilkes Booth while watching a play. His final words were a casual reassurance to his wife. She won't think anything about it. He was referring to what a friend might think of them holding hands at the theater. How scandalous, you Lincolns. Number 17, Andrew Johnson in 1875 took over, and he wasn't exactly popular. Congress tried to impeach him. Years later, Johnson died from 2 strokes he suffered while visiting family. The second stroke left him paralyzed on one side, with his final words being, "My right side is paralyzed. I need no doctor. I can overcome my own troubles." Number 18, Ulysses S. Grant in 1885 was a war hero, but after his presidency, he lost his life savings to a Ponzi scheme. To make matters worse, Grant was diagnosed with throat cancer. Before he died, he wrote his memoirs so his family wouldn't be broke. His last word was water, a simple request for a glass of water because his throat was so dry. Number 19, Rutherford B. Hayes in 1893 died at an old age from heart failure. His emotional last words were, "I know that I'm going where Lucy is," referring to his wife who passed away 4 years earlier. Number 20, James Garfield, 1881, had one of the craziest deaths. After being in office for 100 days, he was shot in a train station, but he didn't die from the bullet. Doctors probing around for the bullet with unsterilized instruments caused a massive infection. After 80 days of agony, Garfield slowly died with his last words being, "Swaim, can't you stop the pain?" He was basically a victim of medical malpractice. Number 21, Chester A. Arthur, 1886, suffered from Bright's disease and died from a stroke at 57. No definitive last words were recorded, but some say he whispered, "Life is not worth living." Number 22, Grover Cleveland in 1908 was our 22nd and our 24th president. He died from a heart failure at 71, with his last words being, "I've tried so hard to do right." Number 23, Benjamin Harrison in 1901. He came down with a bad case of the flu that progressed to pneumonia. His lungs failed and his last words were, "Are there any doctors here? Doctor, my lungs." Number 24, William McKinley in 1901. This was another assassination. A Polish-American anarchist fired 2 bullets into his abdomen. Doctors couldn't locate the bullet, and 8 days later, gangrene set in. McKinley died with his last words being spoken to his wife. We are all going. God's will be done, not ours." Number 25, Theodore Roosevelt died in 1919. Teddy was a tough guy. He was shot in the chest while giving a speech, but he didn't die. He got right back up and gave an 84-minute speech with a bullet lodged in his chest. He went on to live another 6 years, but at 60, he died from a blood clot in his sleep, with his last words being, "Put the light out, James." Number 26, William Howard Taft in 1930 was the president for being so large that he might have gotten stuck in his bathtub. Charming. But he didn't die from that. See, Taft died from heart failure at 72, and his final words weren't recorded. So we'll just have to use our imagination. More pie, please. Number 27, Woodrow Wilson, 1924. He never fully recovered from a massive stroke he suffered while in office. He lived his final years partially paralyzed, with his last words being, "I am a broken piece of machinery. When the machine is broken, I am ready." Number 28, Warren G. Harding died in 1923. He was dealing with corruption scandals while president, and in an effort to rebuild public trust, he went on a speaking tour. But the stress was so great that he developed pneumonia and died from a heart attack. His last words were, "That's good. Go on, read some more." Number 29, Calvin Coolidge died in 1933. Famously super quiet, Calvin died suddenly of a heart attack at age 60. His last words were, "Good morning, Robert," a simple greeting to a worker in his home. Number 30, Herbert Hoover in 1964 Herbert was the second president to reach 90 since John Adams. He eventually died of internal bleeding, but because he was so weak, no last words were ever documented. Number 31, Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1945. FDR was elected president 4 times in a row, but by his 4th term, his health was failing. He suffered a massive stroke while posing for a portrait. His last words were, "I have a terrific pain in the back of my head." 32, Harry Truman in 1972. President Truman lived for several more decades until he was hospitalized at 88 years old from pneumonia. He slipped into a coma, and no last words were recorded when he died. Man, a lot of presidents died from pneumonia. Isn't that crazy? Number 33, Dwight D. Eisenhower. 1969, had a long history of heart attacks and strokes. He ultimately died from congestive heart failure, with his last words being, "I want to go, God, take me." Number 34, John F. Kennedy in 1963. JFK was famously riding in an open motorcade in Dallas when a sniper's bullet struck his head, killing him in an instant. His final words were, "No, you certainly can't," spoken just seconds before he was shot. At just 46 years old, Kennedy was the youngest president ever killed in American history. 35. Lyndon B. Johnson, 1973. President Johnson died 10 years later when he had a massive heart attack at his Texas ranch. As he felt it come on, he grabbed the telephone and said, "Send Mike immediately," referring to his Secret Service agent. Those were his final words as he dropped dead. Number 36. Richard Nixon died in 1994 in a similar fashion. After suffering a massive stroke in his home, Nixon yelled, "Help!" That was his last word as he was rushed to the hospital and slipped into a coma before finally passing. Number 37, Gerald Ford in 2006. President Ford served out the rest of his term, and thanks to modern medicine, he lived to the ripe age of 93 years old, setting a new record for the longest living president in U.S. history. No last words were made public. Number 38, Ronald Reagan, passed in 2004. He wasn't too far behind, dying at 93 years old also after a decade-long battle with Alzheimer's. And since he had Alzheimer's, Reagan had no lucid final words before he died. Number 39, George H.W. Bush in 2018. President George H.W. Bush suffered from Parkinson's in his final years. His last phone call was to his son, President George W. Bush, where he said his final words, "I love you too," right before dying at 94 years old. Number 40, President Jimmy Carter, passed in 2024. President Carter lived to be 100 years old before dying of natural causes. In the final weeks, he told his family that he was ready to see Rosalind again, his wife, who had died just a month earlier. This was the first time we saw a president reach the century mark. 8 presidents died while in office. 4 were assassinated, and 4 died from natural causes. The youngest president died at 46, while the oldest president died at 100. And don't get me started on the insane coincidences between Lincoln and JFK's assassinations, but I guess we can save that for another time. Thanks for watching Long History Short. Hey, we try to keep our videos short, which means we can't put every piece of historical context or evidence in our videos. We know there's more. There's always more. But we want to say thank you to you for watching this because we want to continue to be your shortcut to the whole story. We want to keep bringing you stories that are worth the listen and not only help educate, but entertain a bit too. If you have any suggestions for stories that you would like to hear, we would love to know. Leave a comment, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. See you next time on Long History Short.